Welcome to Mysteries to Die For and this toe tag. I am TG Wolff and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is normally a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. Today is a bonus episode that we call a toe tag. It's the first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, and thriller genre. And today's featured release is Boomsters by David Marks. Alright, we are actually going to read chapter 1 today. I know. I'm always surprised. Never quite sure when we start a book whether we're going to be starting at the beginning, but with Boomsters we are. So let's get going. Chapter 1. We are gathered here today before God in the company of loved ones to celebrate, Rabbi Rabinowitz said, the life of, he paused. The life of, another pause. Finally, he pulled a note card from his pocket. We're here to celebrate the life of Melvin Weinberg. I adjusted my tie as I leaned toward Mary. More like celebrating the death, I said. She rolled her eyes as she listened to the rabbi. Melvin, or Mel, as you probably knew him, was a husband and a father, a man whose life was cut short at the age of 56. The world will not be the same without him. Yeah, it'll be safer now, I whispered to Mary, who responded with an elbow to my left kidney. What? Clearly this rabbi has never met Mel. Candidly, I had never met Mel either, but I was confident I knew more about him than any of the 200 or so people at the funeral. My guess was most were here not because Mel would be missed, but because so many people wanted to confirm he was dead. When you're in your 70s like I am, you become familiar with funerals and certain routines that come with them. But it was easy to see that nothing was routine about this one. Sure, the rabbi forgot the dead man's name, but now he was extolling Mel's virtues. Mel had no virtues. He was a murderer, a rapist, and a gambler. You can't live life as a jerk and die a mensch. Clearly, the rabbi was officiating as a favor to someone. But that wasn't all that was off. Those in attendance were also peculiar. First, a half-dozen FBI agents patrolled the room. Sarah Cutler, the woman expected to be Chicago's next mayor, was seated in the front row for all to see. Scattered throughout were members and employees from the West Coast Club, a fitness center I've worked out at for more than 20 years, and a place I know Mel was no member of. Then there was the crowd in the back row. On one side sat associates of Tony Santori, the head of the notorious Italian crime family. Santori expanded the family's corrupt and dishonorable reign from New Jersey to the Midwest 6 years ago, and although he wasn't in attendance, his presence was certainly felt. On the other side were members of the Deli Boys, a pack of Jews who owned Chicago streets for decades, at least until Santori arrived. Solomon Feldman was their leader, though he, too, was not present. A line of Chicago police officers blanketed the room's back wall, there primarily to keep the peace between the two families. Keep the peace? At a funeral? Like I said, the whole scene was bizarre. Then again, I guess it was fitting for the unique set of circumstances surrounding Mel Weinberg's death. Why they were there was a legitimate question, as was this. As a retired businessman who spent 50 years selling trinkets like light-up Christmas necklaces and pens that sang Yankee Doodle Dandy, what the hell was I doing there? To answer that question, I need to take a step back. David Blazen is my name, born soon after World War II ended at 8 pounds and who cares how many ounces. Growing up, I loved to watch Saturday morning television where Superman stood for justice and Captain America defended our country from evil. All the shows I gravitated to appealed to me because they focused on doing the right thing, no matter if the hero was a rifleman or a collie. I liked when bad people were caught and justice prevailed. And when I couldn't find the right story on our black and white TV, I'd find it in piles of G.I. Joe comics. Before I fantasized about girls, I dreamed about being G.I. Joe. The best education I got came from my World War II veteran dad, a Navy man who was the smartest person I ever knew, even if he never got past 5th grade. From him, I learned how to be human. His motto was simple: it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. I went to Wright Junior College in Chicago, but saying I went there is a loose term. I only showed up when I wanted, which wasn't often. I wanted to learn to be a salesman, so when I wasn't in class, I was practicing my craft. At the time, I sold personalized pens. I decided I learned all the school could teach me 3 months into my freshman year when I sold Wright Junior College 10,000 pens emblazoned with the school's name on them. After my brief stint in college, I started my own business. I sold creative impulse merchandise of all kinds. Things people decide they can't live without, like an extendable back scratcher or holiday-themed ice trays. Those who knew me then would call me creative and fast-paced, and I would agree. I had a zest for being zestful. My creativity was not stymied by what others did or what books said, only by the limits of my imagination. Every day, I challenged my brain to think outside the norm. I got married to an incredible woman, and we raised 4 incredible children. I lost her to cancer far too young, before she could see any of our 10 adorable grandchildren. I retired after 5 decades at the helm of my company and issued my Declaration of Independence. I call it that because I truly felt independent for the first time in my life. No parents or teachers telling me what to do, no customers to worry about, no colleagues to manage. When I got that gold watch at my farewell party, it wasn't just a sign of gratitude. It meant I was on my own. The irony was, I didn't have anything to do. Who cared what time it was? When people asked about my retirement plans, I joked I'd figure something out. But really, I didn't have a clue. One advantage was I wouldn't be completely alone. My girlfriend, Mary, retired from her 40-year business career the day after I left mine, and we entered this new world enthusiastic to travel, relax, and enjoy our lives with one another, like those hokey life insurance commercials with aging couples hugging on a boat, grateful to have time together. It took us 4 days to realize we didn't like boats, and there was only so much hugging to do. We went from leadership positions where others counted on us for direction to spending virtually every waking minute together. It used to take only one of us to squeeze the tomatoes at the produce counter, but now it was a 2-person event complete with discussion and, in most cases, a concession on my part. I was no dummy, though. Bigger decisions would be needed at the avocados. What used to be short trips now became extended outings. Lunch was another discussion, followed by a compromise. Everything we did was a discussion, and then a compromise. The one thing we agreed on was we needed a new plan. Step 1 was to have me rejoin the West Coast Club, WCC. I'd always been in good shape, but in the months leading up to retirement, I was too preoccupied with work and fell out of my regular exercise routine. In my pre-retirement life, the gym provided nothing more than a workout and a quick shower before I scurried off to run my business. I never had time to enjoy the relaxation of a good steam or a nice hot sauna. Now, though, I had nothing but time. Seriously. Mary and I decided I would spend my mornings at the WCC, and then we'd meet for lunch. I wasn't quite sure how I'd fill 5 hours at the gym, but I assumed I'd meet new friends, explore all the place had to offer, or just steam a lot. I was confident I'd figure it out. I've always been a people watcher, so when I wasn't working out, I watched everyone else in the club. Some might call this obsessive, others might call it being extremely bored. I'd say yes to both. I learned a whole lot about the people I shared the club with. I quickly realized that you can't buy a good-looking body, and in my first 6 weeks back, I uncovered 3 different affairs. Frankly, if I didn't spend so much of my mornings naked, either showering or steaming, I'd have kept a diary. After all, the WCC quickly became my life. Even when I wasn't at the club, it was most of what I thought about. On day 48 of retirement, Mary and I had lunch with friends we hadn't seen since we stopped working. They told us about a 2-month cruise around the world they just took. Mary talked about her Pilates classes and her newfound passion for golf, and I told them about the WCC. For some reason, they weren't impressed by the affairs I sleuthed out. Apparently, I needed to work on my delivery. The next day, Mary and I met for our routine post-workout lunch and had our traditional conversation about nothing and everything on our minds. I told her about my personal best of 4 minutes and 30 seconds in the steam room, and to say she was uninterested would be an understatement. She has the incredible gift of simultaneously looking at me in amazement while dozing off with her eyes open. It is a remarkable talent, and one she had practiced a lot during the past few weeks. As I started to tell her about a woman who always pretended to work out, she cut me off. "Sweetie, you need to do more with your life than hang around the club," Mary said. "Look at what one of my girlfriends dropped off." She pulled a book out of her purse. It was called 101 Things to Do in Retirement Years. Mary had always been sweet to me, but not once when I was a successful businessman did she call me sweetie. Was this new term higher or lower on her scale of endearment? I faked interest in the book and put it aside. I didn't think I needed to do anything else. I had the WCC. Day 62 of retirement began like any other. I arrived early at the club, showered, steamed, worked out, and showered again. Afterward, I did a lap around the place, looking to see if I could find anything of interest to fill my time. I meandered into the weight room and toward the row of 5 punching bags on the opposite side of the room. I always gravitated toward the bag on the left. When you peer around it, you have a great view of the entire room, and the darkness of the corner makes it virtually impossible to be seen. Or so I thought. I settled into my prime watching position, and as I started to browse the room, I locked eyes with Betty, the club's CEO, standing 30 feet away from me. Despite her title, Betty was extremely hands-on with the club's day-to-day operations. Everyone knew Betty, but having been a member for so long, I felt like she and I had a special connection. Watching me stare from behind the punching bag, she forced a smile as she signaled me to come her way. What could she want? Maybe to say how great it was seeing someone my age so committed to his health and well-being? If only that was her message. Betty didn't greet me as I approached her. She turned and walked out of the room, so I followed to her office. "Mr. Blazen, please close the door," she said as I walked in. I gave a slight laugh. "Mr. Blazen? Betty, we've known each other for decades. I don't think you've ever called me by my last name. What's this about?" She paused, waiting for me to close the door and sit in one of the 2 red leather chairs facing her. "Mr. Blazen, I know you've been spending a lot of time here the past few months, and, well, we've received a number of complaints about your behavior, particularly your obsessive snooping." Something in those words made it sound like she was describing a psycho. Obsessive snooping? That didn't sound like me. Or maybe it did. "Punching bags are for punching, Mr. Blazen, not hiding behind, and bench presses are for lifting weights, not sitting so you can watch everyone else work out," she continued. "This is a place for people to exercise, not to meddle. We're not in some reality TV show here. I'm going to need to ask you to change some of your daily practices immediately." My cheeks were as red as the chair I sat in. How embarrassing! As bad as Betty's admonishment was, I couldn't help but notice she added tension in the room, like she was trying to say something to me without saying it. It was as if she was warning me of something, like if I kept snooping around, as she called it, I might see something I wouldn't be able to unsee. Was that what this was all about? The whole idea seemed strange, but so did the conversation. Maybe I was just having retirement paranoia. Either way, if the WCC was going to continue to be a part of my daily routine, I'd need to work on fitting in more. In short, my health club was no longer healthy for me. Driving home, I felt as little as could be. In 2 months, I've gone from an international businessman to a peeping Tom. Mary was already worried about me, and now I had to at least consider that her worry was legitimate. I took 4 days off before returning to the WCC. From the moment I walked in until the time I left, I felt I was being watched. Surely they must have been some internal gossip about the weirdos snooping around the club. I steamed, worked out, and showered, and then sat in the ground floor cafe near the lobby. Table 16 was my go-to spot, positioned just to the side of the cafe counter. Prior to my uncomfortable meeting with Betty, that was one of my favorite places to people watch. With my back to the counter, not only could I see everyone who came in and out of the building, but I also had a great vantage point to see the free weight room, the basketball courts, and a squash court. I could also overhear conversations at the cafe counter. There were a few better places to see so much activity. But today was different. I had to show my routine was changing and that I wanted simply to fit in. So instead of my normal seat, I sat on the opposite side of table 16. What better way to show I had no interest in people's business than by literally turning my back to the club's activity? During my self-imposed 4-day break from the club, I thought a lot about what Betty had said. I thought about the worsening strain between Mary and me these past few weeks. I was worried she was getting bored with me. Hell, I was getting bored with myself. I decided I'd look over the things to do in retirement book, so I tossed it in my gym bag. Now, sitting at the WCC, my back to the hustle and bustle of the club, I pulled it out and started to read, ready to be inspired by something new. Number 1, learn to knit. I was not going to learn to knit. Number 2, write a book. Give me a break. I could barely read a book, let alone write one. Number 3, build a model airplane. Number 4, travel. Number 5, plant a garden. This was going to be even harder than I thought. Number 16, lecture on what you know best. Now that's an interesting idea. Maybe I could talk to a business college. Maybe I could talk about business to college kids or professional associations. I'd have to come back to that one. Number 20, join a health club. Ugh. I closed the book, satisfied I'd made it through 20 suggestions, yet thoroughly unsatisfied that even one remotely piqued my interest. I put the book down and was about to get up and stretch when I saw the stairs. Not the stairs I'd gone up and down thousands of times over the years, but a separate set of loft-style ones hidden deep down the end of a long hallway. I'd never even seen those stairs before. I hadn't even realized the hallway was there. I just thought it was an access way to the cafe kitchen. Where could those stairs go? I picked up my book and pretended to read, but instead remained locked on the stairs, curious to see if someone I saw going up or down might indicate what could be found at the top. Over the course of the next hour, I saw a total of 4 men in suits go up the stairs, and none come down. Each was big, not in a muscular way, but more like it was surprising to see them make it up the stairs at all. They clearly were not going to work out. What was going on? The next day, I returned to my new perch at table 16, determined to learn more about the mystery stairs. As I waited for anything interesting to happen, I kept glancing down at my book. It was meant to be a decoy, but I wanted to see if anything else would interest me. Number 21, become an artist. Number 28, collect stamps. Number 35, take cooking lessons. None of those sounded appealing. I was in the middle of reading about remodeling your house when a hard box rammed into my leg. What the hell? I shouted as I looked up to see a smaller-sized man with glasses carrying what must have been a 3-foot-long black case in his right hand. I'm sorry, the man said. I didn't mean to surprise you. My name is Jack, and I couldn't help but see you're reading my favorite retirement book. It's been a lifesaver for me. Really? I asked, surprised, still rubbing my leg in pain. That's right. Thanks to that book, I'm learning the sweet sounds of the trombone, he said, holding up the case. Plus, check out this winter hat. I knitted it myself. Jack pulled out a brown hat with streaks of orange and pink and 2 puffed balls on top. He put the hat on his bald head and beamed with pride. I looked at the 80-something-year-old carrying a trombone and boasting about a hat that looked like an orange and a pomegranate that had been soaked in shit, and I realized if that's what this book thinks retired life should look like, I would no longer have any use for it. "Your hat looks nice," I said, "but if you don't mind, I'm actually late for an appointment." I gave a quick nod, put the book in my gym bag, and began walking down the mystery hallway to the even more mysterious stairs. I didn't have a plan, but I couldn't spend any more time with Jack. I wandered down the hall and discovered a door at the base of the stairs with a keypad on it. That only made me more curious. As I got close to the door, a refrigerator-shaped gentleman stepped out and, with one look at me, closed the door quickly. "Who the hell are you?" he asked. This did not seem like someone I wanted to give my real identity to, so I ignored the question. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm looking to find a room here, and now I can't remember the number," I said. "It's not this one," Mr. Refrigerator said, blocking the door. Well, something interesting was going on up those stairs, but what? "I didn't mean to intrude, sir, if you don't mind," I said, fidgeting in my pocket, pretending to try to find a scrap of paper. "Let me see if I can find that paper." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw another man coming toward the door. I moved to the side and pulled up my wallet, looking for a paper I knew wasn't there. The new man approached and gave Mr. Refrigerator a head nod. He went to the door and typed 49651* into the keypad. Once he walked through the door, I looked back up at Mr. Refrigerator. "Oh, I remember. It was room 18. Do you know where that is?" "Do I look like a map?" Mr. Refrigerator asked. His shape would make for a nice globe, but I kept that to myself. "Fair point. Thanks anyway." I turned and walked back down the hall toward the cafe, a smile on my face almost as big as Trombone Jack's. I had a new project. 49651, 49651, 49651. I repeated the code hundreds of times the rest of the day. Something was happening beyond that door, and now I had the digital key to find out what it was. Tomorrow, I plan to get to the gym early and check it out. I remembered that inkling I had while talking with Betty that she was hiding something from me, and I wondered if the two were connected. Well, I'd soon find out. The next morning, I wore my finest dark gray suit rather than my normal gym garb. I figured if I got to the club early, the door would be more likely to be unguarded, and even if there was someone there, so long as it wasn't the fridge, I wouldn't look out of place. Fortunately, Mary was still sleeping, so I didn't need to explain the odd attire. I got in the car, the sun still not up, and began to drive to the WCC. 49651. On the way, I thought about all the possibilities beyond that door. Before I retired, I never do something like this. I had my purpose in life, and that was that. Now, though, what was my purpose? There must have been some reason I saw the code, 49651. Maybe whatever was going on beyond the door was connected to my larger purpose in life. Maybe it was some grand mystery that only I could solve. On the other hand, maybe it was nothing at all. There's only one way to find out. My mind wandered to detective heroes from the 1980s television, Magnum P.I., Kojak, and Columbo, as I wondered how they handled this situation. Unfortunately, my daydreaming got the best of me, and just 3 minutes from the WCC, flashing lights startled me back to reality. "Pull over," I heard over a loudspeaker. Shocked it could be me the policeman was addressing, I looked and realized there was no other car in sight. I pulled over and sat for at least 10 minutes as the officer called in my license plate. Finally, he got out of his car and he approached me. "Good morning, sir," the officer said. "Did you know you were driving 60 in a 35-mile-per-hour zone?" Truthfully, I had no idea. "I'm sorry, officer, it won't happen again." He slapped me with a $150 ticket and told me to pay more attention behind the wheel. That ticket was more than a fine. It was a wake-up call. What the hell was I doing? I was dressed for an important business meeting when, really, I had no business being where I was trying to go. This was all a stupid idea. Mary was awake when I got home, confused by my outfit and why I left my gym bag. A cheap friend scored his final deal with a 20% discount on his funeral, so long as it was finished before 8:30 a.m., I said. She looked at the clock. It was now 8:42 a.m. She looked back at me. He cut it pretty close. I couldn't tell if she believed me, but it wasn't my biggest concern. I was worried about myself. What was I thinking, trying to sneak up the guarded stairs? Had I lost all sense of reality? Was I depressed? Did I need to be medicated? Those were questions that lingered all day and that I fell asleep to. Sadly, they were still waiting for me in the morning. My fall from grace was steep, and my zest levels had never been lower. To put it simply, I was in a bad place. I lost my interest in WCC. Really, I lost interest in just about everything. I started going through the motions of life with no purpose. My slump took a toll on Mary, and our relationship began to fracture. I knew she was worried about me, but her disappointment in me was truly concerning. We both retired with dreams for this happy and relaxing next chapters of our lives. She held up her end of the deal. What was I doing? She and I started to bicker more, less in the joking way we used to and more with a hint of anger. I always had direction in my life, something I was trying to achieve or go after. Now, though, I was lost with no compass in sight. I got together with a couple of friends over the course of the next 2 weeks to try to answer that question. Bless Mary, she had reached out to them and said I needed their support. And while it was fun catching up, none could shake me from my funk. On day 92 of retirement, I once again cracked open the book endorsed by Trombone Jack. Maybe I'd skipped something good in the first time around. That night, I sat in bed and glanced through the list again. Number 83, search for gold or pennies. Number 91, take up beekeeping. Number 101, golf. I stared at number 101. I'd never been interested in golf. It seemed like a waste of time chasing a little ball around with a stick. If I wanted that kind of frustration, I might as well get a metal detector and search for gold. At least with that, I had the chance of a reward. What do you get with golf? The ball goes in the hole, and then you repeat the whole stupid routine all over again. No thanks. I tossed the book to the side and opted for some TV before going to sleep. Mary, give me the remote, I said, still annoyed with the idea of golf. Get your own damn remote, she said, turning her back to me. I could have pushed, but it was easy to see Mary had no interest in me that evening. I walked around the bed to her side and grabbed the remote. My kids gave me the complete DVD set of The Streets of San Francisco, and I was still making my way through the first season. I flipped the show on and forgot all about my retirement doldrums. The episode had a love triangle that saw a father and son unknowingly having affairs with the same woman. The story was twisted, but as always, the detectives figured out who was to blame for the woman's death. That night, I dreamt I starred in the show as the good guy trying to catch the city's riffraff and protecting the general public. I was in the middle of a car chase, me behind the wheel of one of those classic early 1970 Ford sedans, when suddenly I jolted awake. It was 3:12 a.m. on February 10th, and I knew what I wanted from my retirement life. I was going to be a detective. I wanted to make Mary up and share the big news, but I used my detective skills to determine that that would not end well. I tried going back to sleep, but it was useless. I was wide awake. I got out of bed, energized like I hadn't been in months. Between my interest in solving problems and my recent sleuthing, and being a detective made perfect sense. How did my retirement book overlook this perfect option? I grabbed some breakfast and was back in the bedroom getting dressed for the day ahead, even though it was still pitch black outside. I kept the lights off and tried my best to get ready, but I stubbed my toe on the doorframe as I went for some socks. I did my best to mask the pain as I cursed and grabbed my foot in agony, but I wasn't quiet enough. Mary rolled over and opened one eye to see me hopping up and down holding my foot. David, what the hell are you doing? Oh, good, you're awake. I stopped hopping and tried to forget the sharp jolts of pain in my smallest toe. Mary, I figured it out. I figured out what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to be a detective. I'm not sure what I thought her reaction would be. I wasn't expecting a loud cheer or for her to jump out of bed and give me a big congratulatory hug, but I guess I hoped for some sort of encouraging response. Instead, she smiled and rolled back over. "Great, sweetie. You do that," she said, before falling back asleep. Well, that sounded like approval to me. It wasn't even 5 a.m., and I already had a victory under my belt. At 5:02, I sat down at the desk in my home office for the first time in months. Now, with direction, I was ready to become a detective. My first assignment: figure out how to become a detective. I opened my laptop and searched online for "How do I become a detective?" The first few entries made it clear that to be a detective, you needed years of training, certification, and often to be sponsored by or employed by a larger entity. Saying I used to run the company that made battery-operated squirt guns that light up and make noise probably wouldn't count. I kept searching. I wondered what it would take to join the FBI, but quickly had to rule that out due to the age requirements. I guess Homeland Security and Border Protection were also not looking for 70-year-old high school graduates. Being in the Secret Service would be fun, but I wasn't going to leap in front of the president and take a bullet for him. Not because I approve or disapprove of the guy, but because I couldn't leap anymore. Back to the internet search. There was a job opening for a gate guard at a local senior community center, but I'd rather knit a quilt or maybe one of those stupid hats Jack had. I didn't want to do security. I wanted to follow in my hero's footsteps and focus on the battle of good versus evil. I kept hitting the next button in hopes of finding something that would jump out at me, and then, on page 6 of the search results, I found it. Become a private investigator in just 3 months for $289. Well, that sounded promising. I sat up straight with my shoulders back and proudly announced myself, David Blazen, private investigator. It had a nice ring to it. I wondered how long it took Thomas Magnum to become Magnum PI. Blazen PI sounded even more compelling. There was just one problem. 3 months was still too long. I clicked the link anyway and was taken to the Metro City Internet College, MCIC, website. I poked around a little bit, but was interrupted by the front door slamming. I got up in time to see Mary drive off to another day of golf and Pilates. I'd tell her about my research later. I went back to digging around on the MCIC website. The college was easy to find online and learn about, but I found it impossible to locate a phone number. Many people in my position might have given up, but not this budding private investigator. I just had to get creative. I tried other searches about the college, but still could not find a contact information. My next stop was a rating website where I discovered the school was not held in the highest esteem by the majority. One inspiring 5-star rating from a guy said the 3-month course built the foundation for his lifetime career as a detective. But after that, there were dozens of unfavorable ones. I quickly lost count of the 1-star reviews, people who said the program was a sham and it didn't give them what they thought they would get out of it. They must not have been motivated, I thought, thinking back to that 5-star review. All you need is motivation. As I continued to scroll through the 1-star reviews, I found one of interest. I was looking for a career for my husband, Calvin, and found this online certification to become an official private investigator. He lost his job from the bus company, and we didn't have the tuition money, but my parents were kind enough to lend it to us. What a waste! The class consisted of useless online classes that simply repeated the 8 pamphlets provided as course material. You guys are crooks, and we couldn't be unhappier. Shame on you, Metro City Internet College. Sincerely, Jennifer Talbert, Rockford, Illinois. I found Jennifer's phone number online and gave her a call. I explained I was trying to locate the number for the online school, but I was also sorry for her husband's bad experience. She passed along the number but cautioned me against contacting the school. I heard her warning, but chose to ignore it. I was a man on a mission. I hung up with Jennifer and I called MCIC. Good evening, the voice on the other end of the call said. My name is Sanjay. Evening? It's not even noon. I am sorry, sir. It's evening here in India. Thank you for calling the Metro College for Internet City. I mean the Metro Internet College City. No, the Metro City Internet College? That's the one. How may I be of assistance? I'm looking for more information on your private investigator program, I said. Ah, the private investigator program. A good choice. I'll take your credit card info when you're ready, Sanjay said. No, I'm not ready to pay for it, I told him. I wanted to know more about it, I said, quickly getting frustrated with Sanjay. Oh, well, a private investigator is someone who looks into... Sanjay, I know what a private investigator is. What I don't know is how your program works. Will I be an official PI once I complete your program? Please hold. I waited 5 minutes for him to return. Thank you for waiting. What was your question? Are you kidding me? Will I be official once I complete the program? I asked. Oh, yes, sir. You'll have a certificate and everything. What does everything mean? I asked. Please hold, he said. 5 more minutes went by. Thank you, sir. Everything means all things. Now I am ready for your credit card information. Goodbye, Sanjay. I got off the phone annoyed, but a new idea came to mind. I called Jennifer Talbert back. Hi, this is David. We just spoke a few minutes ago about MCIC and your husband's experience with it. Did you happen to keep any of his reading materials from the class? Hold on, she said. Gizzy, stop humping the table. A few seconds passed before she returned. I'm sorry, who is this and what do you want? Now, I had all sorts of new questions, but I stayed focused like any good PI would. Hi, Jennifer, this is David. I just spoke to you about your husband's MCIC class. Do you still have any of the assigned work he was given for the class? All we have are those stupid pamphlets, she said. I don't even know why we kept them. That's perfect, I replied, struggling to mask my enthusiasm. Would you take $100 for them? $100? I would have given them to you for free, but sure, I'll take the money, she said. Poor Gizzy desperately needs to be neutered, so you'd be helping me out. I took down her address and said I could be there in 90 minutes. Just by talking with Jennifer, I understood money was in short supply for her or Calvin, but pulling up outside their 2-room house made it all the more apparent. The only personalization was a sign in the dirt that read, "A dog lover lives here." I couldn't tell if it was a nod to someone in the house or someone buried in the ground. I hoped the former. I knocked on the door and heard Gizzy's high-pitched bark. No need for a doorbell with that thing. Jennifer opened the door and invited me in. I hadn't made it 3 steps before Gizzy introduced himself to my left leg. I did my best to ignore the 8-pound fluff ball going to town on the side of my leg. I asked Jennifer if she had the pamphlets, and she handed me a brown envelope. In it were all 8 pamphlets, as well as a certificate made out to Calvin Talbot. Are you sure your husband doesn't want this? I asked, pulling out the certificate. Please, she said, just take it all. Calvin was a different man before he took that class. He didn't drink much then. He was frustrated about losing his job, but at least he still had motivation. I think his only goal now is to see how early he can get thrown out of the bar, and I blame that damn MCIC for that. She looked at the certificate. Damn school couldn't even spell his name right. I genuinely felt bad for them, but it was hard to be empathetic as Gizzy humped my leg from behind. I put the certificate back in the envelope and gave her the $100. She kicked Gizzy aside and thanked me. I gave her another $50 and thanked her. 2 more minutes of that dog on me and I would have neutered them up myself with one big kick. I drove home, parked in the driveway, and flung open the front door. Mary, my dear, it's official. Your very own private eye is here. I even got the certificate to prove it. There was no answer. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Mary's car was in the driveway, but where was she? My stomach quivered as I thought about the possibilities. Had she been kidnapped? This must be the feeling private investigators get when they arrive at a crime scene. Something's wrong, and they must be the one to fit the pieces together. I leaned against the entryway hall, hiding myself from view in case any attackers were still in the house. I rounded the corner and flung open the guest bathroom door. Nothing. I crept to the kitchen and looked everywhere I could think, including the cabinets and drawers. Why I thought Mary or an attacker would be in either of those places, I wasn't sure, but as a PI, I had to be thorough. I climbed the stairs as quietly as I could. I made it to the bedroom, and there I saw it, a folded note lying in the center of our bed. Oh my God, she was kidnapped and there was a ransom note. I looked around the room, confirming I was the only one there. I slowly made my way toward the bed. I grabbed Mary's tweezers and carefully picked up the note, making sure I didn't leave any fingerprints. I looked it over and then put it back on the bed, prepared to find out how much the bad guys thought Mary was worth. I took a breath and then used the tweezers to open the note. Went to the mall with Nancy. Be back at 5. I exhaled. Thank goodness Mary was okay. I went back downstairs, grabbed my newly acquired internet college materials, and entered what once was my home office. Now that I was official-ish, it would be known as headquarters. I sat down at the desk and emptied the folder from Jennifer. There were 8 pamphlets, plus a bonus summary chart, and of course, the certificate. I separated the items into neat piles. I found a piece of masking tape and proudly attached my certificate to the wall. Satisfied with my organization and decoration, I grabbed a sheet of paper to jot down a list of supplies I needed to be an official PI. Business cards, new suit, paper clips, a pocket-sized notebook, pens, not from my imprinted pen pile, zip-top bags for evidence, Mary's tweezers, maybe I should buy my own, a picture frame for my certificate. That night, I had another dream. This one was a Western crime saga. A card scandal in a local saloon led to an all-out brawl that left 3 people dead. The sheriff called the Lone Ranger for help on the case. As always, the hero figured out how the murders happened, caught the outlaws, and ultimately saved the town. With the case closed, he hopped on his white horse and galloped away. He pulled off his black mask, and when he turned to look back at the town, it wasn't the Lone Ranger behind the mask. It was me. I brought up my horse on his back legs and shouted, "Hi-ho, Silver!" as we turned and rode out of sight. The next thing I heard was, "David!" My eyes flung open to find Mary sitting up next to me, her face with the look of pure disgust. "Who the hell is Silver?" she asked. "What? You just screamed, 'Hi-ho, Silver!' and woke me up. I thought someone was being attacked." I started to explain that Silver was the Lone Ranger's noble companion, but as soon as Mary heard Silver was a horse, she threw the covers over my head and got out of bed. "David Blazen, we need to talk." "Okay, dear, let me have my morning coffee and I'll see you in headquarters." "David, shut up and be in the kitchen in 5 minutes," she shouted as she slammed the bedroom door. When I got to the kitchen, she was pacing. Once I sat, she stopped and turned toward me, fear in her eyes. "David, who are you?" Was that a trick question? "What do you mean, Mary?" "I'm trying to gauge your level of sanity. I'm worried about you, David. I'm worried about us. We're supposed to be having the time of our lives during retirement. Remember? The carefree lifestyle, the travel, the time together. That was our dream. But look at you now. You were warned about being too much of a creep at the WCC. You got a ticket for speeding. And now you're talking about being a detective and dreaming of a life as a cowboy." I almost stepped in to say calling the Lone Ranger a cowboy was an insult to his bravery and heroism, but I held my tongue. "And I don't even know why you have a private investigator certificate with someone else's name on it hanging in your office. David, what's happened to you?" I started to answer, but I realized the question was rhetorical. "I told my friend about your behavior these past 3 months," Mary continued, "and she said her neighbor's husband retired from a lifelong, fulfilling career, and within 2 months he was convinced he was a Cocker Spaniel. She said he saw a therapist and talked to someone about helping him. David, I want you to go see a therapist too." She leaned against the counter and stared straight into my eyes as tears began to fall from hers. "David, I'm worried about losing you. Forget this detective thing and do something normal. Come to the club and play some golf with me. Please, David, come back to me." I held out my hand and she weakly put hers in it. She looked so defeated. "Mary, my love, I'm right here. I haven't gone anywhere and I promise my sanity is intact. What retirement has taught me so far is that I need mental stimulation. For 50 years I was a businessman and my mind was constantly busy. Once I retired, there was nothing pushing me. I had nothing to put my attention toward. Constantly watching others at the WCC gave my mind something to do. And that's what I think this PI thing can do. I'm not looking to make it big. I just want to do something that allows me to show some creativity and exercise my brain. If I get to solve a couple of cases, great. But if I don't, that's fine too. And I hear you, I continued. Give me the therapist's number and I'll give them a call. In the meantime, let's travel. Let's keep going to dinner with friends. Let's do everything we wanted to do in retirement. I just want to keep my mind fresh. And right now, I think I can do that with this PI stuff. Mary remained quiet. Do you really think anyone will hire you? She finally asked. Would you hire a 70-year-old private eye with no experience and questionable credentials? Probably not, she said. So what do I have to lose? More silence. Okay, but David, I still have one question. She walked down the hallway and looked at me as she pointed in my headquarters. Who the hell is Calvin Talbot? I got up and gave Mary a hug and a kiss on the top of her head. That, my dear, is a long story. All right, that is the first chapter of Boomsters by David Marks. So here's my review. Boomsters is a farcical thriller. Newly retired David Blazen is looking for his next adventure. He finds it in the slightly used certificate and the creation of Detective Blaze. Now he's part of the good guys, keeping Chicago safe. He learns the hard way that to make an omelet, you have to break some eggs. Eventually, he asks the questions, how many eggs can you break and still be considered a good guy? Bottom line, Boomsters is for you if you like your thrills offbeat and your morality ambiguous. All right. So the premise is the star of the show, and it's a simple one that mirrors author David Marks' own experience. What if just because you retire doesn't mean you're actually done contributing to society and life? David Blazen faces this challenge, as you all just heard, and a girlfriend who is less than happy with the way he's doing retirement, as you just heard. With a little effort and $150, he buys a slightly used detective training certificate and, using the lessons and the accompanying pamphlets, becomes a force to be reckoned with in Chicago's complicated political and crime scene. This story is difficult to place in a single genre, or genre as I was about to say. On Amazon, it's listed as an organized crime thriller, a PI mystery, and a murder thriller. And all of those are accurate and yet do not fully capture what the reader is in for when you open this book. It is a thriller, as numerous times Detective Blaze's status as a living human being is in peril. It's also told from multiple points of view, even though the first chapter is all from Blaze's. It's told from multiple points of view, so the reader generally knows more than Blaze does about what's going on. It is a mystery, as the core of it starts with the death of a man in the sauna. That was Mel. Competing organized crime families are the shark-infested water that Blaze has to navigate. In my opinion, the thing missing from all of these descriptors is the farcical nature of the storytelling, or maybe it's just the way I read it. Blaze reminds me a little bit of Inspector Clouseau, although without the physical comedy and French accent. When things go the most wrong is when they go the most right for Blaze. David, or Blaze, is likable as our detective. We know, as he knows, that he has no business being a detective. But each success propels him forward, driving him deeper into the multifaceted world of crime. He makes his own decision, and he owns the results. He has a team, many of whom are also in the senior circuit, and a young IT whiz who lives next door. These characters are also likable for their willingness to just jump into very serious situations, either to help Blaze out or for the fun of it. I found the bad guys to be equally likable. Blaze goes to extremes to detail the crimes on the heads of the families. These are not innocent men. But we do see them humanized to multi-dimensional people with strengths and balances, with strengths and insecurities. Yeah, I did like that part. You know, so many times the bad guys are kind of only bad. And sometimes in the badness in this, you do get some dark humor. And again, that kind of leads to some of the farcicalness of it. The plot of the story, with few exceptions, is linear. Blaze enters an ongoing situation, and all the other parties have to react. Blaze and the multiple bad guys consistently act true to their natures. And, that's a really important thing, that the characters that are developed early on, we see them having a continuity of their own. They're not suddenly changing direction because it's convenient for a story. This results in a story that can at times feels like it's wandering toward a conclusion, almost like it's being knocked from one path to the other. And I don't mean that in a criticism way, but if you think about it, it's going on one path, and then somebody reacts to that path, kind of knocking it off that path. And then the next character reacts. And so unlike other books where you have, we'll call it a very consistent story arc, this one seems to bounce around a bit, but it's pretty much by design. The mystery element is the only part where I was left with some questions. The plot of the main story, which is Blaze's intervention in organized crime, is solid and holds up well from the end looking back. This is a long book, and as you just heard, the chapters are long. In the book overall, there's over 530 pages. So some readers are going to jump in and not surface to the end, while others may feel the weight of the page count. Readers who stick hard to the traditional rules of mysteries and thrillers may struggle with some of the farcical elements, while those who can suspend the rules will be delighted with the story. And what I mean by that is there are times where, the police just accepts Blaze as a detective. And when you're kind of reading, it's like, okay, is this a gag? But it's not. It's part of the story, and that's the farcical element. That if you're looking for, a real cop wouldn't do that, you're absolutely right. And if that's the way you read a book, you're going to find a lot to pick on here. But if you can immerse yourself in Detective Blaze's world, there's a lot to enjoy. The ending is intentionally non-traditional, like the rest of the book, and whether you like the ending or not, and whether you agree or disagree with Blaze, it will get you thinking, which is what author David Marks exactly wants. So the Boomsters was released from Wheatmark and is promoted by Partners in Crime Tours. It's available from Amazon and other online retailers. There's links in the show notes. Allow me to introduce you to our author, David Marks. David spent 30 years relying on his creativity to develop some of the world's greatest impulse products. With his retirement, he went from being an innovative workaholic, let's read all the words on a page, with over 200 people on his team, to a man, okay, let's just try that sentence over again. I'll try the whole section over again. David Marks spent 30 years relying on his creativity to develop some of the world's greatest impulse products. With his retirement, he went from being an innovative workaholic with 200 plus team members to a man with no forum to exercise his mind, all in a day. Desperate to do something creative, he imagined a fictitious character facing the same traumatic reality of retirement. Inspired by Crime Stoppers on TV, David pondered the question of how much bad could be justified in the name of good. A book was never the goal. The exercise was simply meant to keep his mind sharp, but in the process, Boomsters was born. Wondering what to read after you finish Boomsters? Partners in Crime Tours is your ultimate destination for all things mystery, crime, thriller, and cozies. Since 2011, they've been working to fill bookshelves with gripping and heart-pounding reads. Discover new mystery series and connect with other fans with Partners in Crime. Look up Partners in Crime Tours on the web or your favorite social media. Links are in the show notes. And authors, whether you're looking to promote your latest mystery or connect with fellow fans of the genre, PICT has you covered. Check out their promotion options that come with the personal attention of a dedicated coordinator. Again, let's say all the letters on that word. Dedicated coordinator. Join us back next week for part 2 of Safe Haven in Season 8, Anything But Murder. Jason Little really gives us a lot to sink our teeth into with this double episode. So start with part 1 and then join us next week for part 2. And with that, Jack, I will turn it over to you to take us out.